Hello, everyone. So this is my name is Shenyuan Hu. I'm the founder of Joint Commonwealth Fund, or JCF. So welcome to the weekly live webinar series of JCF, where we will talk about what's cryptocurrency got to do with me, or what Bitcoin's got to do with me. Okay, so for this week, our topic is about the US-China trade war. It's it's continuing, although there has been a temporary pause in it. So what does this happen to do with crypto, and how is it related to me? Now, basically, you know that, so for some of, probably many of you have heard the news, it's in the past week happening hour-long trade war that's going on between US and China. But first of all, what is a trade war? Okay, for those of you who might just want to have a really basic understanding about this. Essentially, a trade war happens when a country, in this case, the US first, that wants to protect its country or its people, okay? The economy, the jobs at its own country. So for example, because US buys a lot of the goods from overseas, particularly from China, and that's actually, basically giving money to the other foreign country to purchase their goods. So when Donald Trump became the president, he wanted to protect, American jobs, keep the jobs in America. So the way he did this, there are two votes. One is, by making sure that the US people, the governments, the corporations do not purchase as much goods from China. Okay, they can use various kind of, there are many ways to achieve this. So maybe as a policy or as, certain specific regulations, they would try to buy more from America. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is that they might raise tariff. Okay, so which is basically a tax imposed on any foreign imported goods. So in this case, of course, they impose tariff, basically increase the price of these Chinese goods. So when they enter the US market, they will be more expensive and not as competitive or not as, affordable as some of the American service or products. Okay, so that's essentially one very, traditional and typical way that a country can try to protect its own economy, well, at least in intention. Now, of course, the other party, in this case, China, will be negatively affected because you will lose sales, right? Lose trade over the new policy. So, of course, they are not, just someone to be pushed around. They also impose similar measure back to the US. So that means do not purchase American goods, raise up their tariff, making American goods, more expensive. So that, as a result, US also lose trade, lose income from sales to China. Now, the theory or the idea, of course, behind all these actions is that we want to protect our economy, our people, and keep the jobs here, for example, or from China's point of view, they want to make it fair. They don't want America to have an unfair advantage, right? Because if America is making goods more expensive for the Chinese, then, but if China doesn't do something similar, then of course they will buy more goods from US, which they deem would be unfair. So, they all have their reasons. But usually what this impacts or what this, affects is that the people, okay? The people what they will directly experience usually is higher prices, especially for foreign products or service or goods. Because, basically anything that's imported becomes more expensive now. So whether that's good for the consumer or the end users, it's hard to say. It's a different story. But, countries have their considerations. And so the effect, one of that is that. But so what do people do, when they face a situation like this? If there's like a trade war or something that could adversely impact their assets or their purchasing power. one of the ways people do is to hedge their risk, which means that, if I expect, my purchasing power with my own currency will decrease due to, rising price or tariff, for example, then what I might want to do is to, change my currency into something like gold, okay, which probably will be more stable in its price over some period of time. And then, if I just switch it back to my own currency, then I will at least preserve the value of my assets, right? So this is called hedging. So you're basically using another instrument to store your assets as a hedge or like a insurance, a safe, and then you can, switch it back when the time is appropriate. Now, gold has been used as a hedge against, things like this for quite some time. But one interesting thing and this is something you probably should be aware of, is that cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, they actually have been acting as a new form of hedge against such risk. Okay, the reason is very simple, because something like Bitcoin is very similar to gold in many ways. It's basically limited in its supply. There's only 21 millions of Bitcoins ever. There will be ever only that many Bitcoins in the world. And so just like gold, it's of limited supply. And it can store value, okay, just like gold. I mean, people will place a certain perspective of its value onto this instrument, and you can transfer, right? But Bitcoin in many ways is a better gold. The reason is that, gold, if you want to store a ton of gold or like $1 billion of gold, you need to have a large safe deposit, right? And you have to hire security guards. If you transfer gold, you will probably hire some escorts, very expensive ones. And also to verify the purity of gold, you need experts, right? You need these checks. But all these things, all these costs, all these additional extra costs associated with gold do not exist for Bitcoin. Essentially, Bitcoin is very easy to store, very cheap to store, to transfer, and also to verify its validity. So many people do consider Bitcoin as a better form of gold. Now, so one of the interesting things is, of course, Bitcoin act as gold and become a hedge for trade wars. Well, there are different opinions about this, and it's divided. So one view, of course, is that Bitcoin and cryptos, they are not directly related to national economies yet, because even though it rise up quite a lot, but overall the market, it's still just over 150 billions of dollars at most. But while national economies, they're like trillions of dollars. So to say that it has an effect, to the trade war or be affected by its, it's not something that will be very much impacted about. And of course, there's evidence as well. Like recently, this is on the news, actually, this January, US and China, they finally decide to, they started to talk, decide to end some of the trade wars and, start to collaborate again. And the effect of that, actually, the US market, Dow futures, and also Bitcoin slide. Okay, so they decrease in value. So looks like even though the trade war has stopped it, but the markets aren't responding positively. But on the other hand, there are also, so this is, you can see that, it actually, while the trade talks continue and concluded, the market actually has been going down. But there's also another, different evidence. This is something that happens last year, July 2018, okay? What happens was, back then, Bitcoin's price was at 6,800, okay? And all of a sudden, it jumped to 7,400. So that's a big spike, okay? Without any, given potential obvious reason. It just sort of spiked. And then 2 days later, announcement was made on the Chinese side, China announced that they will take some measures to retaliate against US. So that directly actually impact, China's economy and the value of renminbi. So the decrease in value actually. So some observers believe that what happened was there were insiders who knew about the announcement that's going to break out into the news, and it will negatively impact, renminbi's value. These could be some, some government officials, or maybe their, sons and daughters who are in the know, in the loop. So they have, of course, these assets that they don't want to lose values for, or at least, if they can change it to something else, to do a hedge and then switch back, they could actually make a profit out of it. So, they believe that this is something that's what actually happened. That, these people within China, they try to convert their asset into Bitcoin. Now, one of the things you have to know about Bitcoin is that, or cryptos in general, is that it's very easy to transfer Bitcoin from A to B without any permission at all. Okay, once you have some Bitcoin under your wallet, that's you can control, you can basically send it to any other address, any other sort of account in the world, over the internet, and you don't have to gain anybody's permission. You can just do it. You don't have to get permission from banks, from governments, or any sort. And you can even send billions of dollars just with a single mouse click. So that's something that's really different and powerful about Bitcoin. Any other kind of assets, you don't have that kind of liquidity, not even cash. Okay, if you're doing a cash transfer of, let's say, you want to send your cash out into another country, foreign country, or into US dollar, basically banks, they could block it, governments can block it, they might track it. And also, I mean, it's if it's over a certain amount, then of course they can check if that's actually valid or it's legal. Now, so due to these properties, it's actually a good hedge against risk trade wars. Now, because we are actually based in Taiwan, but I think this is I mean, JCF, where our team is in Taiwan, so we talk about this a little bit, but I think it works the same generally for any other country as well, which is that if your country might have a tension, an intensive or a tension-filled relation with another country, and some kind of war, okay, it doesn't have to be like a physical war. It can be a trade war, or like a cyber war, or even some other incidents. And when that happens, the values of the goods and properties within a country might drop dramatically. For example, let's say if China and Taiwan is having some argument, then there's like a trade war. Actually, something like this happened in the past, which is when Taiwan, there's a new government that took in office and was having a difficult relation with China. China actually blocked all the tourists, okay, going to Taiwan, negatively impact Taiwan's tourism. So, I mean, something like this might happen, and the property values or the goods values could decrease in this country. And if you want to, sort of have a hedge, have a hedge against this kind of risk, probably the traditional way is you will buy some gold, or you will buy maybe some foreign bonds, or foreign currency, for example. But now all of those things, if compared to Bitcoin, may not be as liquid. Okay, so I mean, just take, for example, like real estates or stocks. If a sudden disaster or a sudden trade war happens in your country, then it probably you will not be able to quickly convert your assets into a different form and transport it out somewhere else. This will at least take days, if not months. Let's say you have some real estate properties, right? So a lot of these properties, while they are, they could be good when they have the value, when a disaster comes, it's really not easy to actually protect the asset's value, and you have to hold on to it. But on the other hand, liquid assets like Bitcoin, and it's very liquid, you can just transfer it out to another country, another address, with a mouse click. So this is a property of cryptos that we like to share, and people should understand about this. Now, of course, regarding all these talks, discussions about trade wars and changing economy environments, a lot of these are really out of our reach, out of our control. It's not something we can do, as a small citizen. It's not something we can do something about. It's the politicians, the political leaders that are making the choices, the decisions for us, on behalf of for us. But so our stance here at JCF is actually about, it's really difficult to say in the short term what's the best decision or what's the best action you can take, even though there can be all these different kinds of positive or negative influence. On the global economy, on the national economy, affecting cryptocurrencies. But there are something you can be more sure of, which is the long-term trend. Okay, what's the long-term trend? And this is the question I think that's worth asking and thinking about, which is what is the long-term trend of cryptocurrencies against existing other kinds of, fiat currencies like US dollar or like renminbi or Deutschmark, for example. And I'd like to share the point of view of Tim Draper, who is a very successful VC, venture capitalist, that who has invested in Skype for 10%, and also was an investor in Hotmail. In fact, he invented the term viral marketing. He was also an investor in Baidu and Tesla, all these forward-looking company. He's very, bullish, positive about cryptos. And one of the ways he described this last year when I heard him in person was that, a Bitcoin, a lot of people think that Bitcoin is very volatile. It fluctuates a lot, the price. But what he says is, a Bitcoin, one Bitcoin a year ago is one Bitcoin, a year later it's still one Bitcoin. But it's all these other political currencies. He called these, US dollar, renminbi, political currencies. These political currencies fluctuate their values against Bitcoin, okay? And he predicts that these political currencies will have their values decrease until they are no longer relevant. Okay, so he has a really different, unique perspective about this. But if you really think about what he's trying to say, is that all the currencies we use nowadays in the world, they are really the results of decision-making by politicians and bankers, okay? And a lot of these times, there are different agendas. I mean, it could be, I wouldn't say personal interests, although in some countries that might be the case. But typically in the democratic countries, it's not about personal interests, but maybe, about national or party, the political party's interests, that or maybe the interests of the financial system. For example, in 2008, when the Lehman Brothers, the crisis of the subprime mortgage broke out, causing a global economic crisis, the U.S. government decided to back up the banks, to try to issue more currencies, and basically increase U.S. debt to bail out these banks who are financial institutions who might be going bankrupt, okay, if the government did not come to the rescue. But this all comes at the cost of raising more debt, raising the debt of governments. So in a way, the U.S. government is borrowing money or values from citizens all over the world, okay, due to their strong currency stance. But this is something maybe not everyone is happy about, or they might be, it's a positive thing for them. So when you are looking at these political currency, now things like cryptos, or particularly Bitcoin, it's something not controlled by any governments, political parties, or corporations. So no single individuals or even groups of individuals have any control over its supply or its price. So it's rather just purely market driven. Now, if that's in some way it's a financial instrument, it's a tool, just like currency or gold, but it's not something that's easily manipulatable by governments. So this is something people might choose in the long term, whether they want a political currency or they want something that's more neutral. Okay, and of course, Bitcoin's current price is fluctuating, or all these cryptos, but it's something. If you look at the long term, it's something that might be able to stabilize. Okay, so and when that, it's essentially a question of whether more and more people will see its value and choose it, maybe as a different kind of gold. And when that happens, its value could increase dramatically. So this is something, just as a concluding remark, we would like to share. Okay, think about what's the true nature of cryptocurrencies or Bitcoins, and make judgment by yourself. Okay, of course, this is not something we will have a consensus for, but it's worth watching and thinking about. What's the long-term trend, and if, let's say, Bitcoin just replaces just 5% of today's gold, which is 7.5 trillions of US dollar, that will make each Bitcoin worth at least $50,000. Okay, so it's something worth thought. All right, so I think that's it for today's webcast. And if you like this and you want to learn more about cryptos or how to safely invest, or about how cryptocurrencies can be used for the public good to realize something like universal basic income, then please go to our official website, jcf.world, and learn more from our website or from our webinars, which we can explain more in detail what JCF is about. And so thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.